Hello, everybody. I'll give it that minute. I'm doing another live. This is specifically for Laurel, and I've tagged a number of Americans in this too. So, politicians and would-be politician. Definitely has political leaning, Donald Trump Jr. But I want to get into the concept of absolute voter fraud and what's going on in the United States, what's happening right here in Canada, why it's so important. So I hope I'm out in the boonies. So again, we don't know if I'm going to have my internet. There's somebody's logging on here. People will come on. Okay, everybody, I'm going to get into this now. It's really important. I hope Laurel shows up. I've tagged her, so she's an American, and I see that voter fraud rear its ugly head over and over. And I want to get into a couple of things here, and it's funny. I'm a Canadian, and the way I analyze things is very much different than the average American. So I want to get into that and why sometimes these strengths we have in our political natures are absolutely great when applying at other countries, as in our neighbors, America. So, Laurel, this is for you. I want to start with, it's hard for me to say, believe it or not, this is a realization of a serious accent issue I have. It's where I got into Illinois, and I have to say it slower, versus Illinois, which is how I grew up out west here. Same thing with the concept of censoring versus censoring, okay? They're two different words, but my accent, I'll just say censoring. I say them the same way, and it's a French accent that's embedded in America, easily right across America, even with all the different accents, no matter when you go through South. It has a lot to do with Lady Liberty, the American Constitution, the inner workings with France, which is spread out throughout the central, east, west, south, especially you look at some of the regions, and as I explore each state, I start to learn this stuff. France has a very intricate relationship in the design of America, especially on freedom and breaking from the British. So a lot of French is in there. Whereas if you come north in Canada, we have an issue, especially with two provinces, Alberta versus Quebec, and how I grew up. And it's embedded right in my accent. I have a very hard time, and I don't even think Albertans realize, real true blue Albertans, how they have it too. And I know because Americans are catching me on this all the time. Why I get into it is because censoring versus censoring is a constitutional thing that's going on with Donald Trump Sr. right now, former President Donald Trump. Now, Trump went and he challenged the American Constitution. We all saw on voter fraud, okay? And Laurel, this is for you. And every American, I want Donald Trump Jr., Senator Ted Cruz, and Chris Murphy, Senator Chris Murphy. Two different political parties there. Plus, I want Donald Trump Jr. to understand this. And Laurel, I hope you share this out in lots of American groups. I have a few I could, but I won't. I haven't been sharing too much. I leave it up to followers and viewers to do that now. But we're going to get into it now. So on the 8th here, he starts his Senate inquiries, and they're impeaching him, and they're going for what they can narrate that he's incited insurrection, and there's going to be testimony against that next week. I know they're not going to convict him, but the issue is not about conviction, and he's going to bring forward the voter fraud, his claims again, and there's a major problem here, Americans, across both aisles, and it absolutely has to do with the narration of the machines, how each state operates in elections. Canada, and I know this very well, whether people want to take that or not, or Americans, I know your system extremely well because I live in a very autocratic country, believe it or not. We didn't break from the British. British is the majority system here left to us in what is colonialism. We have not addressed. We're far in worse shape than any kind of Putin narrative that you're all looking at right now as of last year, January. We've been at that for more than 60, almost 70 years now, we've been in a very autocratic system. But getting into that now is on voting. The federal responsibility of presidential election is absolutely in the hands of each and every state. Whereas in Canada, it's countrywide, one set of rules on electing a prime minister and a federal party across every province or territory. Absolutely universal, one set of rules. Canada does not use on federal elections for prime minister or for House or House vote, because we don't have any kind of Senate vote that is absolutely appointed here in Canada. And it's very colonial. You guys wouldn't believe how that's done. But for House and our Prime Minister on our election system, we don't have voting machines. It's all done by hand. But what has happened, the federal government has done what you guys would closest representation and executive order by Prime Minister. However, it's even worse than that because it's a sub-power of what would be the equivalent of your House and Senate with an appointed Senate instead, and not using our actual House but a colonial House. Meaning, imagine if the President of the United States had the power to say, not only am I making an executive order, but I'm dismissing my House and Senate. I'm going to put that over here so we, the people of the United States Constitution, they don't get any of that. I'm president, and I'm going to have what's called a privy council of specified, lifetime appointed at any time House Congress. At any time, if they're alive today, I can hand pick out of all those and put them in what I'm calling my preferred house. It's what Putin has kind of put into place here that America's all up in arms with. But this is absolutely your northern partner, Canada, that's been doing this since 1952. So imagine your president being able to make a whole new house, a smaller, self-appointed house that you, the people, absolutely can't look at who's designing this law. They call it ordering that council. It's a crown power. They take it, and then they take that and they administer it onto all of you. Everybody gets to vote on it in your, what would be your House and Senate, but they don't get any kind of design authority of it. It's just presented to them and already stamped by, imagine your president stamps it like an executive order, but stamping a bill now, an act for we the people, but you had no say in it. You don't even know which reps built it, even if they are even elected reps of today. You don't know. And there's no ever finding out who made the act or bill. And it's pushed forward, and only in a civil law, exactly like civil law. They call it here constitutional monarchy, but it's exactly the same as Putin's civil law, where his specified politicians vote on it, not you, the people. You don't even get to see its design. And that's what's done here in Canada all the time. So when we get to voting now, Americans, Canada has just done one of these orders and councils, meaning a drafted bill through what they call Her Majesty, but the Queen of England didn't have anything to do with it. They say she did. They say this is her Privy Council, but it's actually a fancy way of saying President did it, or for us it's Prime Minister, and they're the actual crown, but they don't tell the people that. But our leader designs, crafts, anytime he wants a bill put through, he will design it, put it into his crown house, and his Senate pushes it through, because they're absolutely crown power too. All appointed, all underneath the sitting Prime Minister. So imagine you guys having a Senate that was built the same way. So what they did is they made an order in council, and they said, we're going to put in all these new voting rules in this bill, and it's going forward right now. It's going to go through sitting to get passed. And the people had nothing to do with it. None of their elected officials had anything to do with it. So imagine your whole house is pushed to the side, rubber stamped by a president, and in a secret house with an appointed secret Senate that you don't know anything about. That's what Justin Trudeau did. Okay? This is coming forward on Canadians for our 2023 election, which gives us multiple polling days. multiple mail-in ballots for many, many days after the election, meaning the electoral list, which you guys all have too, meaning every American voter that's eligible to vote, who pays taxes and is registered, gone through all that. Imagine now they can mail and vote 3-4 days, multiple days of polling, meaning elections won't be decided for probably a week. The end of any kind of polling or sampling, that will be all completely compromised. And the problem here, Americans, when you talk about mail-in ballots after the fact, I've looked at the evidence that's been presented in every single one of your cases. Every single one. Not one exhibit presented by the Republican side. Sorry, Trump has made a lot of money in this. He's raised a ton of money. Plus in pardons, he made a whole pile more. I don't know what to tell you. I followed Donald Trump for 4 years. And that's even for you, Donald Trump Jr. Trying to change laws to bring a federalism, which in Canada, just like this accent thing I have with the French, because we don't have a strong relationship like most Americans do with France, that's opposite for Western Canadians, especially Alberta, real Albertans, real Western people from pre-Canada's Confederation. So any of those settlers having a real issue with France. And just like that accent, we look at absolutely going into election fraud and going, wait a minute, you guys have the power of each state over control of how you administer the federal election, the power of the state. Whereas in our provinces, it's a federalist system. Now, that's your constitution. Donald Trump presented that he wanted to break the federal constitution. He wanted to break it and take that power away from each and every 50 state, which is unconstitutional, and say, I want to administer new rules on a federalist system across all 50 states, which absolutely breaches the Constitution. It's unconstitutional. To address voter fraud in the United States of America, the only way forward is to go to each and every state legislature, or some of them are called assemblies. Some of them have senates, some don't. Not one of the 50 states are exactly the same. Not at all. Like I said, some are legislators, some are assemblies. They even have another term. There's even different terms for how they organize and constitute their courts. Each state has its own constitution. Just like Canada, there's a division of powers. In Canada, and why we can look at you so much more in-depthly than you can look at yourselves, is because in Canada, the provinces have 0 constitutions. It's a division of power, but in all these 150 plus years, no province has ever established a constitution or any of our territories. We have only one federal constitution, and we don't have anything in any province or territory. Whereas you go to the 50 states, each state has a constitution. Some of them are as old as their confederation or inside the union itself. And that is all the difference. Some are even older when they were their own nation, as in Texas, very old. And then they joined the union. They've had tons of amendments, but the way America and Canada operate are absolutely 2 different systems. But on this voter fraud, the voter fraud that Americans wish to go after, you are not going to be able to do it in a federalist narrative. You can't look to Canada for an example, because we're absolutely way worse off than you. And absolutely we have no authority over our federal elections provincially. We don't. 0. We are administered federally right across the board. You are administered per each and every state on those federal elections for president, vice president, and that's just the way it is. When you vote for the federal party, the list of electors chosen by each state, that's state sovereign power constitutionally. You want to address it? Like I said, go to each state. Go after it by each state and each state legislator, state by state. Only way you can do it. That is constitutional. That's what Donald Trump needed to target. Not the target he's going with, or again, going after what he's going to go after here starting on the 8th. It's going to ruin the Republican Party further. Republicans, grand old party, the GOP, this is the issue. They are, if anything but, the party for constitutionalism, lawfulism, conservative, the real ones. So when that party starts demanding constitutional breaches, there's major red flags here. Major red flags for any worldwide constitutionalist looking at this. Doesn't matter which country they're from. If they study constitutionalism, they're going to red flag the GOP. And I had to too. I'd say, whoa, Donald, you had a load limit of rules in your own constitution. It ended December 15th. Now, had you had exhibits to prove your case in what you claimed in voter fraud, it just wasn't done. And I'm sorry, Laurel. I'm sorry, Donald Trump Jr. and even Ted Cruz, who is starting to warm up to all this stuff. But you know what? I know many Americans have been kind of duped into this, and this is the issue. And why, if Donald Trump continues forward, he isn't going to lose the impeachment case, but he is going to set himself up for censoring. I'm going to say that again. Censoring, not censoring, censoring. I'm sorry I have to say it slow. It's my accent. But they're two different terms. And censoring is when Donald Trump is removed from ever running for politics again. That is the goal of the left. And Donald Trump is walking right into that narrative. QAnon, Parler, BitChute, and all these narratives from all these groups that kind of fall on the right, the anti-vax propaganda, all of it, where they want to take rights and freedoms away, that is radical leftism. When you think that your rights to something trump other people's God-given rights, you're not a Republican anymore. And that's when it's, okay, you're another type of left party, an autocratic party. I'm Canadian. I live in an absolute autocratic system. I know it very well. America is the closest free, truly free system in the world. So it's easy for me to highlight when I see autocracy. I know it because I live it every day. That is this video today. I hope it gets out to Americans. I'm not too concerned. I know my followers on the Canadian side, this isn't of critical importance. But I do this for you, Laurel, and other Americans who come forward with this stuff. I'm just trying to tell you that's not how your system works. This is what's real constitutionalism, and that's all about America and America's Constitution. Hope you learned something today, and I hope more Republicans share this out or somehow get it into groups. I don't care. Take the time to listen to it, because this is how it is. It's fact versus the fiction, and this is the absolute destruction. Should you not heed this, including Donald Trump, former President Donald Trump, you don't heed it, it's only going to be to the absolute destruction of Donald Trump and the Republican Party, GOP, going forward. That's reality. Don't attack Mitch McConnell. Don't attack former Vice President Pence. These people are real constitutionalists. Republican Party is loaded with them. Very decent people who understand constitutionalism, who don't break the law, who are absolute about the rule of law. And, as my friend Richard Albert from Texas, who's one of the masters of constitutionalism in this world, American now, he will tell you that is how it works. And if you break the Constitution, and if you want to breach it, you're not really a Republican anymore, because that's not Republican. Never has been. Thanks, everybody. Have a good day. That's my last video for the weekend, unless something super major happens. But I hope that finds you well, Laurel. Bye now.